Oh, coffee's so good. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be reacting to the latest ISC, which has to do with Munching, which is like a salvage component. But before we jump into that, which I have the live video playing with commentary and stuff later, while watching it, something came up that I wanted to address, and it was, do you guys think Star Citizen is making gameplay based off of the technical limitation, or are they designing the gameplay and then fitting the tech to meet it? Now, I know there's obviously a mix of both, and it's kind of been evolving over the years, but it kind of became very apparent to me. And it's funny because as you watch my reaction in the live, I'm really kind of on board with what they're saying, and then as it goes on, I'm like, wait a second, this feels wrong. And so ultimately where I wound up is I think the tech is defining their gameplay, and I don't think it's a good thing. For the reason of, it looks like, unfortunately, hole munching is going to be kind of point your beam, it may not be a beam, but I think it'll be a beam, at your piece of floating wing, and then you hit a button, and based on the qualities of that ring, it's going to have either 5 seconds or 10 seconds or 30 seconds or a minute, I don't know, before this thing breaks up into a bunch of new little pieces. And none of the visuals you're going to see reflect the reality. They make a good job showing that, but is salvage really going to be just point, click, and wait? And I was really hoping for something more than that. So in the live, I ask you, to write in your comments, but I'll do that now too. Write in the comments what you think. Number one, how is Star Citizen designing their stuff? Is it game for, excuse me, is it game first and then tech, or is it use the tech and just make whatever gameplay fits into the tech? So, and then tell me, what do you want, regardless of the technical limitations? I want to know what you guys want out of not just hole scraping, but this newest version of that, the next iteration of that, the deeper level, which is the munching and getting these ships up and out of the universe. What do you want to see from that? Regardless of the limitations, I want to know what's your ideal Star Citizen setup, because mine, on spoiler alert here, is I want it to be where I can take the cutting tool if I'm using the Vulture and go out with my little hand tool and like actually cut a piece, and that's the piece I munch. Yes, it's going to be slower, but that's the gameplay that I want. I'm not just point my beam and it's done. But if they've got to do it within the technical limitation of point, click, wait, then I want it to not be a beam or something. I want it to be where, we have to shoot and place. I'm imagining this EVA character. We're in La La Land here, guys. Okay, so be with me. We are all in La La Land together, where, I place maybe these little small explosives, or I place these studs or something, or it scans and I have to put explosive on specific parts that they lay out, so that way it breaks up correctly, that they lay out. And once I place all those little pieces, I can get back in my Vulture, hit the detonation button, and boom, it just splits the rock. And maybe these are really small charges, so you don't use these for combat or something. Anyway, that's just something I thought of just now, but it's at least a little bit more in depth and technical. So let me know what you think, and let's jump into my live reaction. If you want to stick around for that, I'd appreciate it. So thanks, subscribe if you want, and I'll see you in the next video and down in the comments. All right, where's the end button? Okay, should have had a little bit more coffee. It started, and I'll probably end up pausing, so if that's not your thing, sorry, but I'll watch and give some commentary every once in a while. It's always fun to see what Star Citizen is doing. It is one of my favorite games.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Inside Star Citizen, our weekly look at the behind-the-scenes development of what my mother calls that video game Jared's making whenever she explains it to her friends. It's Q3, and if you've been
Gotta love grandparents, are the best.
Following this show in any of its incarnations for a while now, you know that the road to CitizenCon is a very interesting one for our weekly video content, as we skillfully avoid all the hot topics being saved for the big, now 2-day event, and use that challenge as an opportunity to explore aspects.
Are you guys going to CitizenCon? I thought about going. I don't know that it's going to be worth going this time for me. I do want to go one day eventually, so we'll see if I can make it. But what is this thing? It's like a terrifying Jabba the Hutt, honestly. Like, what is that? Cool helmet, though.
Aspects of our development that might otherwise never get a chance to shine.
Those
it's
will
an
be at
opportunity this
CitizenCon,
quarter
probably.
to look at how Rastar is being used to remaster existing UGFs in Alpha 320, to explore racing a little bit, and a new ship that readers of Jump Point magazine and our social media channels probably already know is on its
And people who follow the Pipeline Leaks Discord, thank you for that.
way. an update to Claudius and how it's being used to create even more immersive environments heading your way, and then a spin around the whole VFX department to see what they're up to. Yes, Virginia, it's true, there will be fire. We can do all this and more as we navigate our journey to the big 2 days in October. But up this week, and my reason for sitting here at my desk, dumping just a little bit of SCL into our ISC, is to talk to Torsten and Jacob from the EUPU feature team about the prototyping process, how they test design and programming implementations at the earliest stages, and how it relates to munching, an important component of salvage, and my nightly routine, just 20 minutes.
So if they're talking about prototyping, like video game prototyping, yeah, I love learning about this stuff. Like the development of the game is super interesting to me. So anytime I get to learn about the process of developing the game, I love that. Now I hate it when it displaces like actual information for the game, and I feel like we're not as far as we should be. But this stuff's pretty cool. So I hope they're prototyping like gaming features, and I would love to see that integrated into the future Arena Commander updates.
Minutes before I go to sleep.
The earliest look at a feature development ever.
Torsten, Jacob, how you doing,
Okay.
people?
Doing good.
I am fine, thank you.
All right, so
Torsten,
we are
let's
here
claim.
talking about prototyping process. Before we get into it, give me the top level, just the like the LinkedIn version answer. What is a prototype and why do
LinkedIn version answer? I've never heard that. Does he mean like Spark Notes?
we do it?
A prototype basically can have several facets in game development, and for us particular, it is always about gameplay, and in this particular case, it is about the technical, the technical problems that we might face and we might have to solve. So for that, we always use prototypes, and playtesting those prototypes is a crucial part in game development, where it is mainly used to prove theories, where the theory is either gameplay is.
I want to know what the theories are. Like, I want to know, like, the design docs. And I know they have some out there, but, like, I want to know about those things early on because I want to know the direction of the game. And I feel like if they would say more what some of the direction is they're trying to go, then they would get feedback from us in a collective way that would be like, hey, guys, that is a really, really terrible idea. Or, hey, this is a great idea. And if there's some theory, they just ignore it. And if there's some nuggets of goodness in there, then they take it. But, you know, hey, it's just me.
It's fun. Does it technically work? And this is basically what the purpose of a prototype is.
Anything you want to add, Jacob?
From more of a dev perspective, we tend to take what the designer's vision is for gameplay, and then we've got to figure out how can we achieve that in the game. And just as often, that's not crystal clear from the start. So we have to try a few things and see what technical hurdles might be ahead of us that we're going to have to consider for the full development.
So what we're going to do on this week's show, the first of our Q3 shows where things are a little bit different, we are going to look at a feature at the absolutely earliest stage. This is earlier than we've ever shown any feature ever, the prototype phase. What we're about to show you is not going to look good. It's not going to look pretty.
I don't care.
It's going to be
Nobody
weird,
cares.
poppy, and buggy. So we're just warning you ahead before you take the footage and put it in your YouTube videos. What is the prototype that we're going to look at right now, Jacob?
We're going to be looking at the prototype for Munching, the next tier of salvage. The idea being...
But we need physicalized damage. So I hope they're building this with that in mind, or maybe that is done and that's enabling this, you know? I don't know.
We need some way to take apart a larger ship and break it into little pieces so that you can then pick it up in your salvage ships, gain some material from that, and you'll be able to sell that later. But we're going to be looking at just the breaking a ship apart phase, which is what we're prototyping
Let's
here.
do it.
Right, so I got it queued up here. Let's take a look at this here.
Getting excited.
So obviously this is a vulture approaching a gladius.
Yep. So for the prototype, we've added in a new munching mode, sub-mode to salvage. So all of that hull scraping UI's disappeared.
What are you going to
we're going
munch
down
with on
to
a vulture?
just what we need
Vulture's not a big ship. I wonder what it's going to munch with.
for this prototype, which is the ability to break apart a ship, which at the moment is going to look exactly the same as if you blew it up with your guns, but in future that would look rather different.
What's happening right here? I see the bar filling up on the left,
Okay,
but nothing's
so-
happening with the ship.
Yeah, so this is the placeholder for the actual gameplay that would happen here. The design will have some actual gameplay for what you have to do as a player to break the ship apart, but we put in that little placeholder, which is just...
This is the countdown to splitting it up. All right, cool.
Essentially a timer, a progress.
Let me know what you guys think. How would you want, you know, if you put yourself in this person's shoes, how would you want to take a wing off? Would it be the cutting tool and it cuts right along that line and you just go for it? What's the risk? Does it destroy the material if you do it poorly? Do you need a mining function? Which I mean, I hope it's not as the same as mining. Again, but how would you build? How would you want to take off a wing? I want to know that.
Bar based on how big the target is.
And that is actually on purpose, because the question that we are asking in this prototype are more technical. That means that we shouldn't focus on the gameplay aspect, so we should keep the gameplay as minimal or as simple as possible.
I know that sounds ridiculous, but I agree with him, because they need to make sure they can actually functionally, it can functionally work before they start making something. Or am I wrong about that? Should that be the other way around? Should we be focusing on what we want the game to look like and then tackling the technical hurdles in front of that? I don't know. I mean, one could prioritize speed, meaning we just do what we can within our current constraints, but that seems weird.
And then so that we can fully focus on the technical bits of the prototype.
So we saw it. We saw it.
Which is just essentially a timer, a progress bar based on how big the target is.
And that is actually on purpose, because the question that we are asking in this prototype are more technical. That means that we shouldn't focus on the gameplay aspect, so we should keep the gameplay as minimal or as simple as possible, and then so that we can fully focus on the technical bits of the prototype.
Okay, so we saw it. We saw it broken into some, what looked like normal debris, but now we got to break it into smaller, munchable stuff. So we'll go back to the video here.
Oh,
so
even smaller.
Breaking it into normal debris is stuff that you've seen before, but when we have this bigger part, it doesn't come apart into more pieces naturally. So in this prototype, we are just deleting the thing and replacing it with loads of tiny little placeholder pieces.
Yeah, it's like, that does not look like that. That is weird. I gotta remember, this is not what it's gonna look like in the end. This is just, okay, imagine you've cut it up to a bunch of pieces.
To act as the munched apart debris. What you're also seeing is a prototype for how you will get those pieces into your cargo, which is a little suction field that grabs those little pieces, drags them towards the grinder in the mouth of the vulture, and from there they're converted into cargo.
Okay, what do you guys think about that? Suction. That's interesting. I don't hate that. There's not a lot of skill involved in suction unless you suction something that's too big, maybe, or you got to make it fit, and the skill's in that part of it. Or does this require a tractor beam instead? And so you tractor and you pull in the pieces into your suction field, and it takes it the rest of the way. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Those little pieces that we saw are obviously not arted and everything. I want to remind people again, we've literally never shown anything in a prototype phase before, so forgive me for reiterating this 2 or 3 more times before we're done here. This is designer art, just small pieces to represent the mass and the size of stuff that we might be using.
It's even worse, it's coda art.
Yes, indeed. This is the programmer equivalent of a white box test, where I'm not even qualified to make white boxes, so I just rip off other assets that I found in the engine and just slap them together. So that's what this is.
And obviously, without being a prototype, there's no VFX, there's no explosions, there's no beams, there's none of the things that would mask this transition that would normally happen, so that you don't see the pieces just pop in, like they're currently doing.
I think personally, you think, okay, that look at his face. Personally, I think that's like overkill explanation, but at the same time, there are people who probably missed all of that and doesn't even register, so he needs to say stuff like that. I was gonna see if there's something written here on his watch. Yeah, that's the face of having to deal with all sorts of people. You know it. I know this face too.
Yes.
All right, so that was done on your local machine, just you on your workstation doing a local version of the universe here. The next phase, as I understand it, is to test it in PU conditions, and we're going to go ahead and start this video because this video is going to go for a little bit. Tell me what we're doing here.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what we're doing, and then we can discuss later why we're doing that.
Exactly.
What we're doing right here is I want to test worst case performance conditions. So I'm chucking in some console commands to load up or stream in several different landing zones at the same time, because otherwise me as just one player on the server, I wouldn't really be loading that much. I wouldn't be stressing the server. So I'm going to stress.
That's a cool look into how they can test like certain PU conditions. I didn't know they could even do that. That's cool. It would make you think that they say that they need to go to live service to get heavier tests on stuff, but if you can do this, I understand that totally, but that's fine. I don't have to.
It quite a lot by loading up as many landing zones as I can think of off the top of my head, basically, until I see that server FPS count go appreciably lower. And then only once I've done that am I going to step into the actual
I wonder if
gameplay
anyone's
test.
going to analyze this and find out like how many locations can be discovered and relate that to server performance. I'm sure somebody will.
Notice you've upgraded from a Gladius to an 890 jump.
Yes, because when I think worst case for breaking a big thing into small things, I want the biggest possible thing, which is going to require lots and lots of small things. So
It'd be fun
yeah,
to like
890 jump is a good candidate for that.
deconstruct
So
chairs and stuff from in there.
what are you typing here? Oh yeah.
I'm just typing in some comments for the other recipients of this video, because this was an internal video for reviewing stuff.
Do you often use console commands to leave notes for people?
There are other ways, but it's the most convenient. So
All right. So we've got the server simulating PU conditions. All the landing zones are loaded at once instead of streaming
Yes.
in and out like they would normally would. So
Yes,
it's actually
and-
worse than you would see on a normal PU.
Indeed.
Oh, he's gonna blow up
and
the
we're
whole
going to
thing,
see
huh?
that immediately, that
Yeah.
this breaking the ship apart that we saw work so nicely in the editor.
I wonder if it's the new Port All-Star over there. Yeah, I think it is.
Well, I've really annoyed the server here because all of these pieces are popping in a not so great way, and I make a bit of a sarcastic comment about it in the console. But yeah.
It's important to create these conditions, to test these things, not just in ideal conditions, not just the ideal universe of your own computer, or even the PU when it's like first loads and nobody's in and everything's great.
No, indeed. What I'm testing here is worse than we would hope it ever to be. We don't want it to ever be this bad, but we got to test it because it might be.
All right, so here's
Now,
where beams
we're
would be
going to-
shooting out, starting to break the ship apart.
Yeah.
God, I really hope you don't just have to hit a button and wait for cooldown and then it just goes blip and turns into something. I want it to be this is my answering my own question I asked you earlier. I want to be in there. I want to be cutting pieces off, pointing lasers, like managing the destruction of the vehicle. Not point, beam, wait 5 seconds, wonk, magically. We've got a bunch of different pieces. But we know it's going to be that. I shouldn't be so sad already, but I'm starting to get there. It's okay. Maybe they won't do that.
There'd be extra gameplay here, there'd be VFX or whatever. But in the editor version, we saw pretty much as soon as the big piece disappeared, all those tiny little bits turned up. Well, it's not going to go that way in this situation. We're going to be waiting quite some time for all those little pieces to turn up.
Gotcha. And so while we're waiting for those pieces to turn up here, let's talk about what we learned from what we've learned from these tests so far. Obviously, there's some performance stuff, but there's also some gameplay implications from what we've seen. Torsten, you want to talk us through it?
Well, I can talk about some parts that we learned from, right?
Sure.
So the best thing that you can learn from a prototype is actually everything that goes bad, because this is the stuff that you can then iterate on and make the gameplay or the technical stuff even better. So
I feel like he might have caught himself there. I think he was going to say make the gameplay avoid running into that problem or make the technical stuff better. But what's more realistic? Probably avoiding that problem in the first place. So, yeah. Okay, I'm going to answer my second question I asked earlier, which is, shouldn't the gameplay design come before the technical and like testing of can we do it? Yeah, I think you should. You should design the gameplay first and then go build your tech to match it. This seems a little backward, maybe.
From the gameplay perspective, so I will just talk about the gameplay stuff, and Jacob can talk about what we learned from the technical perspective there.
Beautiful view of this window.
Yeah, from the gameplay, we learned that, what about big ships? So how, for example, now you saw the Vulture trying to attach to the 890 jump. That is a bit of a wonky situation, and it doesn't feel right. So what about Vultures actually munching bigger ships? So how can we make that an interesting gameplay? Then you saw in the first video what happens when the ship transitions into the smaller bits. So the masking is a huge topic that we have to solve so that it feels right and you don't notice that one element pops away and another element pops in.
Oh, no. They're already confirming it. It's just going to asset swap. Point and shoot.
So we definitely have to mask that. Then what you might have seen in the first part.
They've already decided the gameplay. All they haven't done is decided what graphic effect is going to mask it. The gameplay. Oh no.
Is the conversion of materials. I don't know if you paid attention to the filler station bar that basically fills the SU crates in the backside of the Vulture, but that filled drastically faster than it would normally do with hull scraping. That means that it would be more painful for you to munch because you have to stand up from your seat more often, go down to the filler station, remove the boxes. So this is definitely an issue that we then have to solve because we really don't want to have this.
Maybe not having to manually move the boxes yourself every time, since automation is a thing, and conveyor belts are a thing, and tractor beams are a thing. Why do we have to do that manually?
Gameplay to be more tedious than it's has
to slow the rate. See, that's where there's a problem. Sorry guys, I'm normally not very negative when it comes to Star Citizen stuff, but I'm just thinking about this problem. Like, why would the solution be to slow the filter rate? Why wouldn't the solution be to fix the tediousness that is not gameplay? Trust me, the cargo moving people are gonna have their fun, especially when they have to load and unload cargo on and off of ships. Why make a shuffling minigame deep inside of the thing? I mean, the folks who want to go scrape and mine want to go scrape and mine, not go scrape and mine and move a box. Okay, I take it back. Somebody out there probably wants to do that, but me personally, not for me.
Has to be. So we have to find a solution how we can make it more like much nicer for the player to actually remove those crates there. Then the navigation around the pieces is also something that we notice isn't that fun. So we will probably utilize the tractor beams there because we are anyway working on them. But
oh, wait a second. What
did you say? Pieces is always there. Then the navigation around the pieces is also something that we notice isn't that fun. So we will probably utilize the tractor beams there because we are anyway working on them. But maybe that makes it much easier for players instead of flying around and getting the pieces between the fork.
Okay, let me know what you guys think. Do you want to fly the ship around the pieces, or do you want to use the tractor to pull them in? I'll think about that. I don't know what I think yet, but let me know what you think.
Of the Vulture and then having it disintegrate, but instead you pulling the pieces in with a tractor beam. The fork of the Vulture is very limiting in terms of what pieces will fit. So this is also something we learned. And a big thing is, which already is standing out, is how can we make it fun and unique for the reclaimer. So we just
Well, I think they just said their own answer, right? So he was saying that like the vulture, you know, it can't get pieces that are too big or whatever. Well, I mean, I think your answer there potentially could be something like, yeah, the vulture has to cut the pieces down even more to do it, and that's obviously inefficient. And the reclaimer is huge, so it eats bigger pieces. I feel like that's a self-solving problem there.
just were looking in the prototype at the vulture, and the big question that our team was asking in the end of that prototype was like, okay, how can we facilitate the claw and the uniqueness visuals, or the uniqueness in general of the reclaimer, to actually facilitate that gameplay and have it stand out and be meaningful and fun.
All right, so a lot of gameplay, gameplay implications from just that little prototype. Jacob, what was your takeaways?
From the tech perspective, I'm looking at things like the performance, and also just what am I going to have to account for to achieve the designer's vision here. And I know that we're going to want things like the time that it takes to destroy something to be somewhat proportional for its size and mass. But from the initial prototype, I could already see that a bigger piece taking longer. It already takes a few seconds with the Gladius. If we're going to scale that up and scale up the time as well proportionally to a big target, we're going to have.
Yeah, I mean, bigger ships take longer, but still, they're talking about point and click and wait, and that's not fun.
To think about what equation are we going to use for scaling that, so that it doesn't take you ages, like sitting there for minutes to break something apart. I got to think about how.
But see, sitting there is the problem. If he was going around and doing stuff for ages, then you don't have a problem. You just have more fun.
Oh, I'm going to hook in the visual effects and the audio, whatever. What dependencies am I going to need to get involved?
Speaking of, judging time, the entity system is taking a little bit of time to spawn all the spawn debris. We've been talking. This is still going at the moment.
Wow.
Obviously, there's going to have to be some optimization work there with the entity system.
This is kind of what we've got with PES is that it's not quite as quick to create entities as before we had PES. And we have all sorts of great stuff that comes with PES. So this is just a small limitation that we have to learn to work around.
Yeah, and like Star Citizen has always kind of been slow at bringing things in. So this is very slow, obviously.
But it tells us that gameplay ideas that we had before PES might need some adaptation in order to work efficiently in the post-PES world.
So they're saying that it's probably not something that they can change or overcome in any short period of time, so they'll have to adjust. Interesting.
So yeah, so speaking of which, let's go back to the video. I think we're about to get the entity spawns now. Any second, this is playing in the background while we've been talking.
Here any moment now, yes.
There we go.
There we go. And a bit of a flicker as they come in, but they're finally here. So yeah, this tells us, well, in this worst case scenario, this performance is obviously unacceptable. We're going to have to do something about this. So we're thinking about how can we change our approach? How can we optimize what we've got? Discussions in various different directions. But this is a key takeaway from this prototype, because if it had gone differently, if we tried this and the pieces turned up in just a few seconds or so, then we'd have known that this approach on the whole was probably acceptable, and with a little bit of optimization, it'd work. But that's not what happened. The stuff took minutes to arrive, and that means we have to do some more serious rethinking about how we're going to approach this.
The vision and the basically the acceptance criteria our directors define, they are still untouched, right? So those are still to be fulfilled. And
I need to hear that again.
Some more serious rethinking about how we're going to approach this.
The vision and the basically the acceptance criteria our directors define,
What is that?
They are still untouched, right? So those are still to be fulfilled. And even the overall vision that we as the team defined for how that gameplay should play out, those will be those are already set in stone because we all agreed on those.
Guys, have I missed
But how
this?
actually,
Did I miss that? Has that been laid out somewhere? I mean, I definitely could have. I could have missed it. What is it supposed to be?
the gameplay then plays and feels. This is still affected by the prototype. A prototype like this is really perfect for stepping in early and making sure that every tick box on our acceptance criteria is met, and we can make a better gameplay out of it.
I think we all have a real desire and responsibility towards testing these things as often and as early and under as much duress as possible as we work to stabilize the PU and make it a more enjoyable experience going forward. So
yeah, they need to do that. They need to test it early so that they don't end up making this fully fleshed thing that then turns out to suck later because it doesn't actually technically work in the PU.
Torsten, Jacob, thank you. Thank you for hanging out with us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cool. Was that the whole video? Basically, yeah. I saw this clip. Or I saw the start of this clip right here. Yeah. That's hilarious. That's funny.
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that prototyping doesn't really look like much of anything, but it's an essential step towards proving out design and performance before all the artists and other devs go in to do their thing. That it's just as important to prove out good ideas and good paths to take as it is to encourage developers to seek out another way towards success. And that it's important to continue refining not just the features and content being made, but the very way that we test those things, earlier and earlier, and under a scale of duress. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee.
Were we not doing that before?
Share the process of game development with you, and we'll see you all here next week.
All right. Well, there's always a little clip at the end. Not always, but there's sometimes something funny at the end. Dang. All right, let me go back here. What do you guys think? That was interesting. I mean, I'm happy that we're getting to Munching. I think that's super cool. I love seeing the prototype, but I do wonder. I think the biggest takeaway for me here is the tech defining the gameplay, or is the gameplay defining the tech? And I think the tech is defining the gameplay in this instance, in two ways, both in the click, countdown, explode way, and secondly the oh well, that might not even work because of the timing. So excited for what they do here, excited to see the rest of all these efforts they're putting into it, and I do think it'll be great. As at the end of the day, the game. But I really don't know about click, point, and it disintegrates. It'll be something, it'll be something, and we need something to clean up the PES anyway. So, well, thanks for watching that with me, guys, and leave your comments down below, and I will see you in the next video.